This is Ellen in Philadelphia. It's Saturday morning and you are listening to Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Driscoll in Dallas. Today we are talking with acclaimed post-disciplinary artist Kerstin Hovland on Light Talk.
And this is David, coming to you from the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers and SISTAH. You see, Ellen, I finally got it right.
Great.
Well, welcome everyone to episode 237. And today we welcome our special guest artist, Kerstin Hovland, to Light Talk. Welcome to Light Talk, Kerstin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And what part of the world are you in today?
I am in Los Angeles, where I am based. So I'm home.
You're right down the street from me.
Yeah, just,
Well, it's great to have you here with us. So before we get started, Ellen, could you please tell our listeners a little bit about Kerstin's fabulous career?
Absolutely. Kerstin Larissa Hovland is a post-disciplinary artist specializing in pixels, programming, and light for music and performance. She received an MFA in experimental animation and integrated media from California Institute of the Arts and a BFA in visual communication with a minor in computer science from Iowa State University. She is a co-founder and principal artist at Electronic Countermeasures, a Los Angeles-based firm specializing in immersive experiences and environments of all shapes, sizes, and mediums. So, I have the first question. What exactly do you mean by post-disciplinary, and how did you get there?
it's kind of a long journey. What I mean by post-disciplinary is the work we end up doing doesn't tend to fit within traditional disciplines or traditional mediums. So what I end up being interested in and doing is, it's very much between like theater and lighting, dance, video, time-based medium. It becomes kind of hard to explain with a single kind of catchy phrase, like, what do? I can't say I'm a lighting designer. That's not exactly true. I can't say I'm a projection designer, even though that's the nomenclature around what we do, and especially where kind of I fit in this industry, will often tend to put me in a place where I don't necessarily fit. So trying to find a name for the kind of art we do, my studio, and for my practice specifically, is difficult. So post-disciplinary sort of covers everything. We don't want to describe, pigeonhole us into a particular discipline or division of labor, or in that same way, claim an expertise in a very specific, a lighting designer carries a certain aura and, specific amount of training, amount of, role within a production that isn't necessarily, sometimes we will fill that role, but I don't want to say that's what I do compared to some people who are lighting designers.
No, I was going to say it makes sense. I mean, you sort of want to be immersive in a lot of ways yourself,
Exactly. In a lot of ways, it means knowing enough about a lot of things, knowing who the questions to ask to kind of fit these disciplines into a larger, more immersive, more more collaborative type of discipline that this industry is kind of moving towards. Those roles are becoming a little more messy and have been, I think, maybe since video entered the stage.
Yeah, for a while, convergence was sort of a buzzword. Like, is the light from the video? Is the video from the light? Who controls the color? Who controls the intensity? So it sort of started getting that way.
I think that you should start your own graduate program in post-disciplinary artistry, or
I may not even be the first. I think it's a.
You may not, but you probably do it very well. But because it's all like, well, you're a lighting designer, you're a set designer, you're a costume designer, you're a projection designer. No, I'm like everything.
John Conklin would call you a theater animal.
Yeah, fair. Except I don't always do theater. So a little complicated.
And John Conklin doesn't do theater. He does opera. So,
yeah.
But, that's the thing. I mean, I think it's great that we're branching out now, that now we're thinking much more holistically about the art instead of like a bunch of specialists, Mm-hmm. I must tell you, I saw your website. I'm kind of jumping a question here, but I saw your website and I was so impressed with, the type of work you do. And of course, we've all seen your work on television, and obviously now tell me if this is right, Ellen. The Video Music Awards, right? VMAs. Okay, I keep on calling it the Music Video Awards because I think that it's grammatically more correct. but I may be wrong. Who knows? But anyway, we've all seen your work on that, and we've all seen your work also on the NBA, which we're going to talk about too. The NBA bubble we'll be talking about, which sounds like a lot of fun. So yeah, it looks like you do just a little bit of everything.
Yep, that's where I get the post-disciplinary from. Like I said, a little bit of everything. I guess to answer Ellen's kind of other question, like how did I get here? I started doing, of course, theater in high school. I had a terrible case of stage fright, which I seem to be getting over just a little bit, enough to do podcasts anyway and to talk at LDI. But much more comfortable back there making the lights do things. We had an old ETC, Express, one of those. Dimmer system, all those, it was pretty good for a Midwestern high school. And that was a lot of fun. But everyone's like, oh, you should go into engineering. Your dad's an engineer, get a real job, go get a real education, all that sort of stuff. So I didn't even consider, that a career in the arts would be for me, So I went into computer engineering but I was at Iowa State. I put myself through school as a local crew stagehand. Like that's how I paid for back when you could put yourself through school on a part-time job doing, pushing boxes in and out of trucks. So it was sort of I never quite left the world of performance. Like I really enjoyed that as a part-time job, did my schooling by day. And as I was getting deeper into like what I was doing in the engineering front, I found myself pretty much getting sucked into the world of the defense contractor. And it was becoming very hard to get out of. So at a certain point, I realized that if I really wanted to do something not dealing with the military industrial complex, because even I was finding that the work I was doing I was also working at the Virtual Reality Application Center there, so I was into early VR and human computer action. But a lot of that work I was doing was very much funneling towards, like, as I found out later, the drone program. So I kind of made a clean break. I'm like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I cannot do the mental gymnastics to make this okay. So I basically bailed a semester out of graduating with my degree in engineering and changed that all over to a degree in art, because I had the credits. So it was, I could stuff them around in different ways to make it work. And I graduated in studio arts with a kind of that minor in computer science and human computer interaction. And from there, graduated right into the 2008 crash. So all those jobs in animation and like those kind of early VR startups and all of that stuff just vanished. It was it's kind of the theme of my career, the best worst timing. So from there, I was like, well, what do I do now? And I figured I'll go back to school. And I started looking at kind of grad school programs, trying, still applying for jobs, waiting for the economy to sort of come back. And I know this industry was also having a fun time with that. But I saw a concert specifically. It was the Lights in the Sky, 9 Inch Nails. I think, I'm trying to remember who all was designing on that. It's escaping me right now. But it was very interactive. Like there was so much interaction between the band and the screens, lights, like they used light to wipe out pixels on the screen. They had like break beam sensors and things like that. So it was very much it was everything I knew how to do. It was everything I loved doing. It was concerts, it was light, it was video, it was programming, it was human computer interaction. And I was like, well, how do I do that? So from that moment on in 2008, I kind of tailored my whole career trajectory to figure out how do I do that kind of concert? How do I make that kind of experience for people? And that's how I got here. Went to CalArts, found Bob Boniel's name in it. He was teaching at CalArts, applied. Wasn't sure I could get into a theater program because none of my experience up to that point led to that, but I was pretty sure I could get into an animation program. So I applied for experimental animation at CalArts, and it's been kind of history since then.
That's really interesting, especially when you consider the options that you probably had, and to be fortunate enough to actually find Bob and to have him direct you, because he does a lot of this. Yeah.
Funny story, he left CalArts the year I came, so I ended up being taught by his student, Pablo, a little bit. And so we met later on. But yeah, it's like I said, best bouncing around.
That's really interesting. I mean, it's so serendipitous when you think about it. And you kind of found your own niche when you think about it too. Yeah, because when I started to do some research on you, and of course I've been following your career back when you were doing a lot of stuff with the Foo Fighters, when you first started doing with the Foo Fighters, because I saw some of those concerts. I was so impressed with them. I was like, wow, I mean, look at all the stuff this amazing woman does. She's really like much more holistic than you would imagine, and having people, like we talked about earlier, pigeonholed into certain specialties. So, I think that's really, really cool.
Hey, Kerstin, this is such a pleasure, and your career is so interesting. We have heard that you have a very interesting technical side to your process. Could you sort of elaborate what that means?
There are lots of technical and artistic sides to the process. I think our approach that the sort of our studio is known for is very much for as technical as we are. Both my partner and I have backgrounds in computer programming and engineering. So part of that is how we use that is sort of making tools for ourselves, especially in the early days. We did a lot with processing and did a lot with code-based, time-based media. So using processing to generate, generate effects and generate some kind of live input, either sound reactive or human reactive type systems for ourselves. But in discovering sort of what the limitations of that are, what we really found was interesting was the component of liveness, the component of something that is real in the world that creates the reaction in the video or lighting, whether that's, and that can take pretty much any form, but we found ourselves working under camera a lot, like using sound and liquid to generate effects, or using like some really old techniques like hand-drawn animation, and stop motion, things from the earliest days of animation into these really technical processes, so that you can make this kind of blend. It's animation, like the hand-drawn animation is so time consuming, right? I've for Paul McCartney, for example, we did for the benefit of Mr. Kite. That was all hand-drawn loops, done within a week, and my hand still kind of cramps thinking about it. I was just there over a light box with a pencil, like tracing these loop backs and all of these different things. But there's a look to that, that hand, that life, that kind of life breathing process of animation that I found I can't really get any other way. There's nothing that really generates it programmatically. There's something about the real under camera, like the filmed process, but those are so time consuming that it makes it impractical and too expensive for a lot of the timelines and budgets that our productions sort of fall under. So our almost our claim to fame is like using kind of a hybrid of these really technical processes to loop them, bring them in, change them, so that you can do sort of the minimal amount of this high intensity work and use it a lot of different ways, so that it becomes practical for a concert timeline and budget.
That's great. I feel like you and a gentleman I went to grad school with, Dan Scully, his stories from his Harvard days to computer science to what he's doing now, I just adore.
I know Dan. Dan and I have worked together. Yeah.
So, Kerstin, could you please discuss how you approach video and lighting collaboration and integration?
The projects I like best are the ones where the video and the lighting are considered completely together, as like from the same amount of time, and even the set, like when the set design, like the actual screens design, the set, the video, the lighting is considered as kind of an entire creative thought together. So the designers I think I've enjoyed working best with, the projects I think have been most successful, are the ones that have been the tightest integration from the beginning. Because there, it can be seen kind of as two ways. I think a lot of projection and video, when that started becoming more prevalent in theater and in concerts, there's sort of a fight. There's always a fight for space, for lumens, for for what makes sense. Like an LED wall is always, at full strength, is always going to blow the heck out of your beams. Your lighting and is always going to blow the heck out of a projector. Like, there is always a discussion that has to take place. Like, because if everybody just goes full on, like, this is what I want to do, when they all meet in the middle, on stage, somebody's going to end up unhappy. Which,
it's chaos.
It's
chaos. Total chaos.
And then you get the sound department and they're hanging their line arrays and you're like, well, why were those on the drawing? The projectors go right through those. That's not going to work. So like...
Did that ever happen to you? Did that ever happen to you? Where like they blocked like a projector?
Yes, absolutely. Like
oh my God.
When the finally drawings get merged, this has to move. This is interesting. Like, of course, like from a very practical, like physical standpoint,
right.
All of these things are competing for space. And from a creative standpoint, all of these things are competing for space. What really needs to take up the most space is what story you're trying to tell. What, if it's a band, like what is the environment that the band is performing in? Like, it's very easy to lose sight of what actually serves the creative purpose of what you're doing. And so, the things that have been the most successful, like, really bring that all together at the beginning. And everything is sort of in service of that core story, whether it's a story, whether it's a look, whether it's an environment, whether it's a band and their, and their relationship with their fans and their relationship with, like, say, what pictures their fans are taking. Like, there's usually a really core theme that everything else comes out of. And I'm talking, we're talking to the lighting designer and the set designer from the beginning. The whole thing is designed together. And, that can be pretty rare, especially in things like, large festivals where, these things are siloed out until they come together because, that's sort of the nature of the beast. But like you said, the Foo Fighters, the 1975, or video and light are one element that have to play, in this space as the same thought. And it's not always practical because that sometimes takes a lot of time. Like, the previous tools are maybe getting there to get us to the point where we can kind of map some of that out, or, you have a long relationship with that designer. You can kind of discuss, what the intent is and kind of start tailoring that early. But in a lot of ways, having that time on site to, like, look at the whole rig together as a whole thought, which is hard to get, is what's going to get you the best results. It really is like a canvas and paint, and they all have to exist in the same place.
I guess I have the next question, which is that we think the name of your company is really cool. Electronic Countermeasures. How did you come up with that?
I love it.
that comes from a couple-fold. Both of our kind of my background in I worked at Lockheed Martin briefly, worked on some planes, worked on some things. So there is sort of a tongue-in-cheek, like, military.
So those are defense mechanisms.
But so electronic countermeasures is, it's missile defense, right? Like, it's some kind of, like, jamming frequency or something that keeps you alive when people are shooting at you, which was, we got our name because that's what we were doing early on in our career. Like, we were brought in a lot as fixers. Like, something would go horribly wrong and the budget would be gone, and and we were young and unknown, so it was like, well, these two have a history of standing up broken projects. Come in and like, what can they do with it? So we ended up on a lot of, like, rescue missions.
That could be a good thing or a bad thing, because when I was young, I was known how to make really ugly sets look good.
Yeah.
The problem was that I was only hired when they had ugly sets.
Right. That's you start out being the fixer call. Like, you're like, well, we've exhausted every other option. Let's try these new kids. It's not all of that was not all of our jobs, but it was enough of them early on that it was sort of an inside joke, like, time to defend them from the slings and arrows of outrageous, terrible tech decisions.
Well, it's great because that's what we do. We solve problems.
We solve problems, yeah. And it's all that. So, like, after you save enough things and you get a good reputation, then you become the first call. And then it's like, well, what can we do when we have the whole budget and the whole time? And
we have other designers for that,
Yeah.
we just need you to fix the problems that they screw up. You'll be hearing from us in 6 weeks.
Yeah, it still sometimes happens. We don't want to do it that way, or that's too much money. And then he's like, well, if we don't hear from you again, that's fine. And then when you call us in 6 weeks, we'll smile and be like, okay. Yeah. It's stuck, it just kind of stuck as from that joke, but it is sort of a cool name. It doesn't fit on any paperwork or anything like that. So you're like, it's many syllables. But yeah, from there, it's just sort of become our brand, and people know us. And even if we thought it was funny to start with, we are definitely stuck with it now.
So tell us about your fabulous work on the MTV Video Music Awards. How did you collaborate and integrate with the other video designers on the show?
So that's kind of an example, of a project where a lot of the parameters are put in place for you before you even you kind of even get there. Like the stage is already built, the lighting rig is already there. Like you kind of are then having to work with your band and your designer into what already exists. And I had kind of a unique position on that show because I was coming in as the Foo Fighters video designer, working with Dan Hadley, working with their management, what they wanted. But also I was brought in to be kind of the content manager, which is the other half of my career, is doing this like very technical, very detail oriented, like getting it all together and putting it all in one place, sure it all shows up on the screen from different. So I'm very embedded within the team that's doing the actual like pushing the go button when it's going out for the VMAs, which is a very different relationship to the stage than like you have when you're just out with the tour. So to kind of answer that question, I know what that system is capable of. I know what the limitations are and what they're up against, because that team, that's doing the whole VMAs video thing is, how many acts were there? 15? They've got a very set amount of time that they can spend on each band. And if you can't get it to work out within that set of time, it's pretty much not going to happen. Like they'll do anything. They're a great team. They'll do anything to help you if they can. But, you have to respect the fact that you are one band, even if it might be, it's the most important thing to you, you're one of many important things to them. So in that respect, it's trying to make a design and make something. Everybody wants something to stand out and be different. Of course, that's what we're there for, is to like, you're one of 15 bands. Everyone wants a very different thing, but also making sure that it's going to work within that system and can be achieved in the time you have. For the Foo Fighters, for their tour, what we wanted to do was make it very much about being there. Make it about, make the video less something that's brought in and tells the story from the screen to the audience. We wanted very much that story to be sort of an elevation and a conversation between like the audience that was there and the band as they're on stage right now. So for that show, we had 15 cameras on stage, looking at different, we can zoom in on the pedal boards and we can zoom in on, we can go under the drums. We have all these different cameras on things. So each of the textures for the tour are very much made up of a notch block and a little bit of pre-rendered video, some textures and other things, but largely it's all created out of things that are already present in the room. The camera facing back at the audience, the traditional IMAG shots that you're going to have to, make sure that everybody can see Dave's face, and and the kind of relationship that you brought in, but also these details that are, if you're lucky enough to be in the front row, you might see, but you're never going to get an overhead shot necessarily of somebody's pedal board and what they're pushing, and we can kind of bring that in. For the VMAs, obviously it's a much shorter set. We have 3 songs, and not even the full songs of those, so we have to tell that story very quickly. But we also have kind of an interesting, we have a floor. We have a video floor, and we have the lighting, and we still wanted to keep that sort of live input. So we did get them to add kind of another D3 system that had a notch, enough capability to do our sort of notch block, and we brought in the spider cam that's being used. We choreographed that so that at certain points, like during in Learn to Fly, in the chorus, we had the spider cam looking right out over the stage and the floor, and then pulling back and spinning kind of to do a little bit of a video feedback look into the floor. And it's a great shot. It took a lot of work, a lot of coordination between different departments to kind of like make that one moment happen. I think it really, really worked. Bringing in the Foo Fighters as, they're super charismatic, they're super in tune with the audience. There's this moment, so kind of to feed that out into the cameras, into the TV that the people watching home are seeing. Like that's a hard ask, and I think that in a few moments we really managed to get that there.
Yeah. It was incredibly well produced and well designed. We talked about this on the show a few weeks ago. We actually talked about the VMAs and your work and also the work of the other fabulous designers on it. That floor was amazing, and it really worked well. There were only a couple spots I thought it was kind of weird. So some of the high shots, but what the shot you're talking about was brilliant. But anyway, you mentioned the Foo Fighters. Tell us how you got involved with the Foo Fighters.
That was Dan Hadley came to us. We'd worked with Beck. Everything we've done has been basically word of mouth through designers. I think like people have had a good experience, or we've been able to sort of integrate well into specific workflows. I think there are some bands we work definitely better for, and for bands like Beck and the Foo Fighters who don't do there's not a lot of time code. A lot of it's very live. A lot of it's very present in the rooms. That aesthetic of being responsive to the live environment really fits well. So we worked with Beck and their team, and it was kind of a funny story. So we sent out a lot of stuff to them, and they were very busy. Like it was a very last minute turnaround. We didn't hear back. Like we sent sort of we're like, is everything okay? Do you need anything else? And nothing came back. It was like, okay, well, I hope they got what they needed,
That sounds like one of my nightmares.
No, it really is. You're like, and then the invoice goes out, the check comes back. You're like, well, I guess they liked it. But then we, got a call from Dan Hadley. He's like, hey, my friends over at Beck said we gotta talk to these people. They did a real good job with us, and we think it would be a good fit. And then, just a couple of meetings with him, talk through what he was looking for, what his aesthetic, he knows that band very well. He's been with them a long time. So it's very easy to communicate, like for him to communicate to us, this is what works for me, this is what doesn't. And for us to then respond to that. Yeah. Working with the Foo Fighters, it's a band that, I don't want to say I'm what exactly age I've been listening to for a long time. Like my middle school self would be so
you're
proud of
You're
myself.
a fan.
Yeah,
you're like saying,
and
one day I'll
Beck
be
too.
working for these people.
No,
that's like meeting, it's never gonna happen. And then all of a sudden, wow, I can just imagine.
Yeah,
wow.
it's a vocabulary, you get to, especially with bands, the music, and, even newer bands, we spend a lot of time listening to the music. So we want to do things that we like, because to do a band, to work with a band whose music you don't understand or don't really mesh with, you're not going to do, I think, as good of a job as something that like you really understand what that aesthetic is and what they're trying to communicate.
When I was a younger man, I used to have a Mark Brickman voodoo doll, because I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan. So I used to say, there you go, Mark, take this.
That's funny.
I can just imagine.
Well, I know that Kerstin said she had a terrible stage fright, but this says that you list yourself as a performer. Have you done performance?
I have. I've been a musician. I've sung with the New York Oratorio Society. I've sung at Carnegie Hall and the Rudolfinum. So I've done some. It's mostly acting and speaking at the stage, right? Like I can. So I know what it's like to be out on stage too, and like what environment I would be most comfortable in. I was a not very good dancer. I've played flute in an experimental metal band. Make your obligatory Jethro Tull joke now.
Did you do Aqualung? Did you do any sort of like Aqualung, or were you in more into like the early Jethro Tull stuff that was really jazzy? It was fantastic. Are you a jazzer? Are you an improv musician?
Not so much. No, I do like the notes to pretty much say what they're going
only
to.
because the reason I asked is because a lot of what you're talking about with your work with the Foo Fighters seems like it's somewhat improvisational, of light of the moment. And I was just wondering if that moved over into your music as well.
No, I think for music, I think I do enjoy jazz. Grew up listening to it. My dad's a huge fan. Yeah, as far as performance goes, I have done, video as instrument. I played in some bands in grad school, and worked with some kind of ensembles and theater groups and sort of other things to sort of figure out what the role of video as an instrument or as a character, or how is video more than a backdrop? How is it more than, a single note in a larger composition? How is it more integrated into what that is? So I did a lot of experimentation with what does a video instrument look like? I've made a few interfaces, or even in that experimental metal orchestra where I played the flute, I also had some did some synthesizer work with them, or we did some video backdrop stuff that tried to figure out where is that tipping point between something that is reactive and something that is performative that makes it feel vital. I do find in some places that works out in a professional context, and in some cases it's less appropriate. Some things will start out, sound reactive or performative reactive, and then, simplify down into something that's more rendered out or more repeatable, depending on what the needs of the performance and of the tour are. I'm less prescriptive about what the technology is and more about what enables the effect we want to have.
Although it does sound like you've got a pretty complete toolkit, because you just talk about, Disguise and Notch and Unreal and Touch Designer, and it's all just there.
It's all just there, yeah. I'm not going to say I'm equally good at programming any of it, but I do want to know enough. I do have enough of a base knowledge about what all of it does to come up with what the appropriate solution is, bring the right people in. If, I'm not much of a touch designer person. I do, if I need that to happen, I know who to call. But it's there are so many tools, and all of them have, it's really about what you're trying to do and getting in the right tools and the right people and the right team, and have it coming all around back to that collaboration is are you a video designer or a touch designer programmer? Are you an animator or a lighting designer? Back to that kind of post-disciplinary idea, it's really about having that team and those people and enough of the knowledge, especially where I guess I am in my career, to know who to call and know when it's the best time for me to jump in and actually get my hands into the thing, or do I call Rod McLaughlin? Do I call Dan Scully? Do I call, the people at Possible to come, do some amazing Unreal work, or whatever. I just enjoy the overall design and process and storytelling. So I don't know what that makes me, but
it feels like you play designer and then you have to go into project management mode.
Sometimes, yeah.
You're like, okay, now I have this idea, but I need 90 people to do their individual things. Yeah.
And then sometimes I have to get out the light box and the paper and pencils and hand draw some stuff. I do love that everything, I don't know what every day is going to hold necessarily. I don't know what every project is going to need. I might be flying between different skill sets. I know enough lighting. I know I can program, if I have some time, I can program some stuff on an MA too. My first interview, I guess, with Tobias Rylander, when we eventually did the 1975 together, he's like, "Oh, I need a programmer." I'm like, "Okay, that's me." And he's like, "So MA too?" And I'm like, "Oh, not I'm going to make motions with my hands here, which is bad for a podcast, but this kind of programming, typing on a keyboard, not this type of programming, like touching an MA, mm-hmm. Different kind of programmer." But I've had some time. There's some projects where I can't necessarily afford to bring in a programmer. So I had to then learn to program some of these lighting consoles myself, because it wasn't cute that I didn't know how. But so I know enough to get myself in trouble with that, but I'm definitely not going to sit down next to a designer and say, "Hey, I'm your lighting programmer. Guess what? We're going to be here all week with me trying to do a waterfall chase."
Where's that button?
Where's the button? Please escape.
Escape. Pig. Whatever. All right.
Zach told us that you have some great stories about your experience inside the NBA bubble. Would you share a few with us and explain to me what an NBA bubble is?
Oh, the bubble.
Well, first of all, Zach told us that you had a giant umbilical cord going from the arena into your hotel room or something like that.
Oh, God, yes. So...
what was that all about?
The magic of Disney, as it turns out, is really the fact that the whole resort is connected by just kilometers of fiber. The whole thing is wired up with dark fiber that they can light up. And apparently from resort to resort, from venue to venue, there's just all sorts of interconnectivity. Had us finding that out was, because of COVID protocols, the NBA bubble, just to go back, the NBA wanted to have a season during the height of uncertainty around COVID, right? Like we didn't have a vaccine yet. We didn't have a lot of things going for us. So how do you make a season happen safely? And this is really uncharted territory. So their protocol was to let's just bubble everybody. We'll test every day. We'll, no contact with the outside world, or as little contact as possible. We'll keep you sequestered and safe and all this other stuff. And I will keep personnel down to a bare minimum, as little congregating as possible. This is already sounding like a really a great way to run 3 months of your life.
Let's just tell you right now, you didn't miss anything. Because we were all sitting in our homes during those 3 months.
It was just Tiger King.
That's right, Tiger King. That's what we had.
I did not watch Tiger King, probably because I was in the bubble.
Consider yourself lucky. Go ahead.
Right. So in order to do this really safely, we needed to then, to kind of kick that off, everybody needed to quarantine. We needed to have 7 days. It started out as 14 days. Thank God it wasn't 14. 7 days where we were all super isolated. Get your pre-quarantine test every day, and we'll just sort of make sure that there's no COVID floating around in the population as much as possible. But the quarantine period also coincided with kind of our major delivery time for all of this video content. And there's 22 teams. Each team has its own content company. The NBA itself has its own kind of content division house. There is a lot of, and there's, every court is ringed with 3 sides of, LED walls, a quarter mile of LED. So you can imagine there's just a flood of content coming in. And you're sort of telling us that we need to quarantine and not leave our hotel rooms at the exact same time that you need to take delivery of all of this and look at it and have meetings about it and so how do we get that done? And the solution was to put the entire video team in a line of rooms at the Coronado Springs Hotel, as close as they could get us to the terminator, the closet of that dark fiber. So they can link us up to the actual venue where all of our stuff is, all of the screens are, all of that via that fiber. And it's very close to us being there. Get a console in somebody's room. So there's imagine a line of just, video people as programmers with one console in somebody's room. I've got my content management station, kind of roll gaff tape and other things between the rooms. I'm not sure if that's allowed or not, but, so during this quarantine period, we were basically operating as a tethered front of house to the venue. And then after the quarantine period, everybody else who could, had to brought their consoles back and were but for the content manager, me, there was really no difference between me running the various NAS, storage situations and all of that from the venue or from my room. And since the whole goal is to keep people in the venue as low as possible, there was no reason to move me back into the venue. So for the next 2.5 months after quarantine, I stayed in my room with my computer, quarantined basically. It was a great, it was good to not in some ways have to go to the venue because again, we didn't know what was safe. We think back then there was a certain amount of risk. So, of course, if I could stay out of it, even better. But at the same time, it's has anyone seen Kerstin in a few days? My team did make sure, somebody made sure I'd left and eaten lunch, and seen, gone on a walk or something. And it was again, it was just a flood of content that I was managing, especially when we had all of the teams. So there were some pretty long days the show was so big, it didn't all fit on a single, like we couldn't fit the whole show on a server. So it was a lot of pulling files off of servers and making sure only the teams that needed to be in each thing had their content, but like teams that weren't playing that day or for the next couple of days, those would kind of go into a cold storage situation and we'd pull that back on. So it was a lot of just managing files. I don't know what do you get when you have a D3 that is suddenly missing 3/4 of its media that it knows about? Like you have a very angry D3.
So how was the food? Was the food good at least?
No,
Did they give you good food?
No. I don't know. Have you ever heard of a cheeseburger egg roll?
No, and I don't want to know anything more about it.
Yeah, there you go.
That sounds awful. Were there conjugal visits allowed? I mean, you were totally like completely removed?
Well, I mean, according maybe some people had some. I don't know, but no, we weren't allowed to. You weren't allowed to go and see friends. Or in Orlando too. Florida was really hard hit. At that point, like that was a bad place to be. Right then, and so yeah, we weren't, you couldn't even call a Postmates, they didn't even want you Postmatesing in food. So you were pretty stuck with whatever they were willing to deliver to you.
Cheese, what were they, egg rolls?
Cheeseburger egg roll.
Cheeseburger egg rolls.
My other favorite was shrimp in an Asian box. That was some questionable food.
Is that
naming.
what it was called?
It
Shrimp
was.
in an Asian box?
We have pictures of it.
That's not a good. That's going to be. By the way, that's going to be the title of this episode: Shrimp in an Asian box.
There were some definite questionable food choices. My favorite was cup of ice.
Cup of ice. How much did that cost?
I don't know. I have to ask the NBA.
Yeah,
probably a lot.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like the NBA spared no expense when it came to the Epicurean delights they offered.
And for a lot of the cases, the players were not in any better situation. There were some pictures from the players' like Instagram accounts. They're like, really? And I'm like, well, I feel a little bit better knowing that you're eating it too.
That's true. Shrimp in an Asian box.
I'll give them some credit. Like it's a logistical nightmare. It really is. How do you?
Yeah, I can imagine.
How do you do this under COVID protocols? And nobody really wants to. You think like living at a Disney resort would be great, but really a week is probably as much as you want. COVID. 3 months. Yeah, right.
I mean, it's crazy. I was at a Marriott like 2 weekends ago for my niece's wedding, and it's in Brooklyn, right? And it's a really nice Marriott, but they had nothing. There was no restaurant open. There were no bars weren't open. They even fired the concierge. There was no concierge. It was crazy. I mean, It's nuts what's happening.
It's a difficult time, but Mickey Mouse Pancake Day was definitely a good day.
Well, those good pancakes, Mickey Mouse pancakes.
Well, yeah, anything that was Mickey Mouse shaped, like Mickey Mouse Churro Day, Mickey Mouse Waffle Day, it was good.
Nice.
Baked Potato Day was usually a favorite.
When you have those Chip and Dale come over and they want to know which one is which, but they don't talk, so you have to guess which one is Chip and which one is Dale. And there's a dead giveaway, but you have to know it. So.
Oh, is one Jewish and the other one's not?
No, one has a chocolate chip nose. The other one doesn't.
Okay, I don't know.
Oh, I didn't get the Chip and Dale
Kerstin.
Okay, now I know.
Okay, that's good.
But they don't let you look there.
Oh, okay. Well, I used to work at Disney. I would look there all the time because I was curious. So I was a cartoon character curious.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yes, definitely.
So, do you have any advice for our student listeners who might wish to enter the fields of pixels, programming, or immersive design?
Yeah, I think my best advice is to find figure out what your angle is. What are the things that excite you, and what can you contribute uniquely to that world? Of course, be looking at what everybody's doing, be cognizant and aware of but emulating somebody's style or thinking you have to be very much like, I want to be exactly like this person, or I want to do what this person is doing. I hear from a lot of students, like, I wanted my career, I want to be like this. It's more about, for me, being open to how you interact with the people around you and yourself, and what excites and drives you. What is the experience you are trying to create that only you uniquely can create, and finding what that is. That's it sounds, in a sentence, that's that's a really hard thing to do. And it's a question you kind of have to keep asking yourself, and will probably continue asking yourself throughout the rest of your career. Like, what is it I'm trying? What exactly do I do here? What am I trying to give to this that only I can give to this? And being pretty, my other then piece of advice is be good to yourself mentally and physically. This is a hard space to work in. We're finding kind of out now we're in the language of the IATSE strike and all that. We're in this moment that it is a difficult environment to work in. It demands a lot of you. Find ways to recharge what it is that makes you want to be here, and come into this space and find ways to respect that of yourself and of that of the people you work with, and that we're all sort of human and we have human bodies, and those things have needs. And I think we can all, from the student to the people hiring students to finding out what it is to be really respectful of what we are all trying to do here, and you will have a much better experience.
Yeah, I think that's really important advice. We've talked a couple times about the sort of life-work balance, and as you said, it's certainly coming to the forefront with the IATSE situation. So, discussion for
work-life
another
balance
day.
is for another day. But be honest with yourself. Be honest with the people around you, and do what you love. And remember that you're doing it because you love it. And if you could love doing something else more,
do it.
Do it, because this is very difficult. But you're here, Yeah, I don't know.
That's great advice. It really is. It's about love, and it's about passion, and it's about making the world a better place.
But don't let that passion be exploited. It's also about, you have to love it and you have to want to be here, but you also have to be taken care of, and make sure that you can take care of what you need to take care of. It has to balance.
Very wise words. Well, Kerstin, thank you so much for being here with us today. Ever since I saw that old Foo Fighters video, I was like saying, wow, this is amazing work. And then I saw the work on the Video Music Awards. Wow. Now I really need to find out. Yeah, I mean, we actually talk about it. You should check out the show. I mean, we actually talk about it quite a bit. We do a whole let's talk about it anyway. But I've got a little bit of advice for you, and that is stay off those damn cheeseburger egg rolls, because they
oh God, if I never saw another one of those again, it would be too soon.
And no shrimp in boxes. I don't even want to hear that anymore, even though that's what we're going to probably call it.
Cup of ice.
Cup of ice.
And for dessert, we have a cup of ice.
I guess it depends what you put in the ice.
If there's vodka in that ice, I'm all for it. Thank you. All right, guys, let's wrap it up. The rocking sounds of the Luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on Spotify, iTunes, Google, YouTube, livedesignonline.com, Amazon Prime Music, and just about every other podcast site out there. Check out our website on lighttalk.org, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you do decide to litigate, the law firm of Flecht, Flock, Flare and Glare and their paralegal snoot will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers and SISTAH, coming to you today from Long Beach, Los Angeles, Dallas, and the great city of Philadelphia.
And be sure to join us next week when we chat about more useless things and explore the crazy shenanigans in our industry.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So our thanks again to post-disciplinary artist Kerstin Hovland, and we will see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Light Talk.